This is Destiny, or Destiny 1. Depending on who you ask, this game is either one of the best times they've ever had playing a game, or it was one of the biggest disappointments in gaming at the time. And why is that? How does a game appeal to so many and turn so many others away with disappointment? That's what I'm here to talk about today. Why did players leave? Why did players stay? What made Destiny so special to those that did stay? There's a lot of questions, but in this video we will go over the game and all of its stages of its life cycle and break down why this game has such a large and loving community behind it, but at the same time has turned so many players away as well. Also, an important side note is I'll only be discussing Destiny 1 in this video, and if you want a video like this for Destiny 2, let me know in the comments. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Destiny was a massive hype train from the beginning. Bungie, who had left Microsoft and joined Activision, was the developer behind the then massively successful Halo franchise, so it was only natural to get excited for anything Bungie was going to work on. Bungie left Halo to go work on Destiny, and with Activision backing them, they would have a lot of resources to do so. The marketing for the game began, and it pulled people in instantly. It was all coming together as this game that was being marketed as this epic free-roam space fantasy first-person shooter MMORPG from the creators of Halo and the publishers behind Call of Duty. It was almost as if this game would have a little something for everyone. Not to mention the game was getting a lot of hype for being the most expensive game ever to be made at the time, so of course people got even more hyped. Many people started to assume, with so much money being poured into this game, how could it not be absolutely mind-blowing? So everybody started to develop these huge expectations that would be nearly impossible to meet, even with it being Bungie behind the project. All the pieces worked together, and Bungie being such a trusted and well-known studio with seemingly unlimited resources, how could the game be anything short of fantastic? And with trailer after promising trailer, the game was nearing release, so soon players would finally get their hands on Destiny, and everyone would be saying what they thought of the game.
That's it?
After playing for well over 60 hours, Destiny's not what I expected it to be. I don't think it's what anyone expected it to be. I'm not left wondering why Destiny isn't a better game, I'm left wondering what happened, because something isn't right.
The sheer lack of mission diversity and overall creativity, however, make it equally as likely you'll leave Destiny behind for something with more excitement and more soul.
In the end, Destiny is worth buying at sale price.
2 out of 5. Suck my balls, Bungie.
This is definitely a title that strikes a chord with certain people and not so much with others.
The launch, though financially successful, left a lot of frustrations with the community. Players felt that the game was all flash and no substance. The game was beautiful and visually impressive, the gunplay was great, and the music did its job very well at creating an atmosphere for the player, but players felt that there was just a lot missing, and in reality, there was. Now I'll throw in real quick that I'm not really going to focus on talking about Crucible or PvP much this video, because I don't think there's much to say on that subject, plus I'm not as huge a fan of the PvP side of Destiny. Crucible in my opinion just kind of feels like it's there and you can either enjoy it or not. But overall, the opinion on Crucible at launch was consistent with most of the feelings surrounding the game, which was disappointment. The game's campaign and story were kind of just a letdown. You start out by being brought back from the dead by your ghost and are told you've been dead for hundreds of years and that you're going to see a lot of things you don't understand. And the ghost was not wrong. Instead of being told about the world you were in throughout the campaign kind of just throws you at these places and missions without really much of any explanation.
We haven't got much time.
Who are you?
Why have you been watching us?
I don't even have time to explain why I don't have time to explain.
People criticize the campaign for being just a bunch of fetch quests. and they felt like they spent the entire campaign defending their ghost while he scanned something. And once he finished, a door would open, you'd move into the next room, beat a bullet sponge boss, then rinse and repeat the next mission. And this was a problem for people. Though the enemies were cool in design and the worlds felt and looked good, people felt like there was no reason to care about the worlds because nothing felt clear. The campaign didn't even feel like it had a main antagonist, it's just referred to as the Darkness, and it's returning to destroy us all.
But the Traveler had an enemy, a darkness.
Fight the darkness.
You must push back the darkness.
We've always known the darkness would return.
The darkness is coming back. The darkness.
But when you finally come face to face with the darkness, it's just a big black floating sludge ball. So you beat the big black floating sludge ball, go back to the tower, and that's it. Everyone celebrates, you stop the darkness from spreading, and you are left thinking, wait, that's all? The story of being bad hit people specifically hard because they expected a lot more from Bungie since they had such a good reputation for making great campaigns. And since the campaign wasn't good, this drove many players away early on because if the early game didn't feel good, people assumed the higher level grind wouldn't be either, as well as not worth their time. But this next reason for players leaving is arguably the biggest one for Destiny in general and continues to be to this day. So you beat the campaign and feel underwhelmed and disappointed. There doesn't feel like there's much to do afterward. You've already done every strike and patrol many times and haven't been able to get 5 other competent players for Vault of Glass. And it just doesn't feel worth the grind to get to the higher levels in the first place with all this repetitive content. What you really need is more to play, but aren't sure where to get it. But a light at the end of the tunnel appears, and you see it. An ad for Destiny's expansion pass. Did you feel like there wasn't enough content at launch and maybe the game wasn't worth the $60 price tag in the first place? Well, you're in luck. For the small price of $20 per individual expansion, or one ultimate $35 discounted price, you could buy the content that you needed and was technically already in the game, but just hidden behind a paywall and being sat on for profit. So not only was the base game campaign a failure in most sides, but now if you wanted some actual decent story content to play, you had to go and buy it. Now I will add this one was most likely on Activision, but that didn't matter to people. What was done was done. People didn't want to pay more for a game they already felt was a letdown and not worth the $60 price tag in the first place. And the expansions were a big deal for the game in the long run. So players being turned off by a large price tag and other reasons wasn't good for anyone at Bungie or Activision. These expansions brought in some actual coherent campaign content that'd be a big deal down the road. Let's take Dark Below for example. Dark Below was the first time you felt like there was actually a big bad villain because of 2 very simple things. Crota, the antagonist of the expansion, had a name and a face, which was something Destiny lacked in a villain at the time. So if you didn't buy Dark Below then, why would you want to buy Taken King later down the road? If you didn't buy Dark Below because of the price tag, how's Bungie gonna get you to buy Taken King for twice as much? Especially if you aren't invested of the story of Taken King because you missed the events that took place prior in Dark Below. A big reason for players dropping off was that it felt like you really couldn't get access to what the game was meant to be unless you paid lots of money to get over the undeniable paywall. The game being a $60 game in itself, plus the added costs if you bought the expansions as soon as they came out and before they went on sale, would have you spend over $170 on the game by the end of its life cycle, and that's a lot of money. Destiny was a case for many of, yeah, the base game sucks, but if you spend more money, you can actually have fun. But who wants to spend money on a game just to be told you have to spend more money to actually enjoy it? That's right, you guessed it, nobody. If you bought Taken King and all the expansions leading up to it, chances are you felt like there was more than enough to do between all the new campaign missions, strikes, raids, and more. Destiny was finally at a place where it would thrive, and it really only got better from year 2. All the people who had left for the reasons I pointed out were gone and most likely not coming back, leaving only a fanbase who was really just passionate about what Destiny had to offer throughout its life cycle. It's just a shame it took so many expansions to get to where it was and that it didn't launch with a smooth start in the first place. But the game was just a case of it only got better from here, and from here I mean year 1. And that's why there's so many different opinions on whether or not the game was good or not. It really just depended on which group you fell under. Did you stick it out till the end, buy every expansion, and get to witness the game turning into what so many love? Or were you driven away early on by disappointment and a large price tag like so many others? I've mostly covered why people left and why there is and was such a divide between players, so now it's time to talk about the game itself and why people like me and so many others find Destiny to be such a special experience and have so many great memories playing it. This is the experience Destiny had to offer throughout its life cycle, and you'll get to see how it changed and evolved from the shell of what it was meant to be of year 1 all the way to the end of the Age of Triumph of year 3. Destiny was definitely not everyone's cup of tea. You either loved the grind and enjoyed the RNG drop mechanics of loot and loved melting bullet sponge bosses as fast as possible, or you felt that it wasn't that great and you wanted a clear path to the loot you desired, a path without RNG involved, and wanted to do more than just shoot at a boss for a long time until he died. And I'm not saying the people who didn't enjoy the game were wrong, I even get it, but I fall into the group that enjoys the grind Destiny has to offer because it feels rewarding to have put so much work into your character and to show off that work with your guns and armor. But now let's get into the actual game itself. What did Destiny Year 1 offer? Year 1 was a strange time for Destiny. People weren't really sure what kind of game it would actually be. Was it going to be the story-driven MMORPG Bungie promised, or lean more heavily into the competitive PvP aspect of things, making it more like COD and Halo? And the answer is definitely more MMORPG than competitive multiplayer. Yes, PvP received its fair share of updates and grew with the game, but more on that later. At the game's launch, Destiny gave you 3 class choices. Would you choose the Scout-like Hunter, the Tank-like Titan, or the Mystical Warlock as your first character? Each character class had 2 different subclasses to grind and level up, as well as the base game's character, weapon, and armor leveling systems. The subclasses were your character's ability sets. They had various different grenades to choose from, jump and melee mechanics, and most importantly, they decided which super ability you would use. And the more you played with a specific subclass, the more you unlocked for it and the more you could customize it to your playstyle. The grind for weapons and gear was just that, a grind. You could obtain the various different tiers of loot through the loot drop mechanic, the engram. The rarity tiers being the white common, the green uncommon, the blue rare, the purple legendary, and the gear every Titan, Warlock, and Hunter strive for, the yellow exotics. What made exotics so special was just like normal weapons and armor, you could rank them up, but exotics had a special perk unique to each exotic that made them very desirable to obtain. The game's main hub and its first social space, the Tower, was where you would go to speak to many different vendors and grab bounties and quests to complete by doing various activities all around the game. To level up a specific vendor, you would grab the bounties and quests they had to offer, and by completing those bounties and quests, you could rank that vendor up and receive the loot they had to offer. Pretty standard stuff. So now you have a pretty good idea of how Destiny was in terms of grind and leveling up, but what about the activities you do the grind on? The best way to rank up a character early on was by completing the base campaign, but as we said, that wasn't all that great. So what was life after doing the campaign? Well, at least for the first 7 days of launch, you could play patrols and do strikes. Strikes were the replayable story missions designed to be beaten with your fire team, and strikes offered many different ways to tackle them. Did you want to do some normal strikes and chill with the boys? Maybe bump up the difficulty to heroic for a bigger challenge but better rewards. Or maybe you and your fire team were ready to take on the weekly Nightfall, which was much more difficult than your average strike, but gave you a chance for an exotic drop and much better loot. The strikes even had their own loot that you could get by grinding a specific strike, but it was random on whether or not the loot would actually drop after the strike. As I said earlier, you either loved the RNG-based loot grind or not. This was really an unfortunate factor that played into players leaving the game, but that's just how it was. The patrols were the free roam aspect of the game, allowing you to return to the locations you had visited during the campaign and explore them further. Each patrol had a material to seek out that was unique to that patrol, hidden chests to loot, a variety of patrol missions to activate, and of course the public events. And since most patrols gave you unlimited access to your Sparrow, navigating these patrols was really fun. The real issue was replayability for Year 1 patrols. Once you had discovered every chest, gathered enough materials, and played each patrol mission, you had experienced about all there was patrolling had to offer. Sure, you had public events to do, and being an MMO, you could do these public events alone and suddenly have other fire teams in your server join you, which was pretty cool. But the public events weren't the problem, but the way they would happen was. Public events happen in many different locations, but they were not on a timer. Instead, they happened randomly, so that left a lot of time waiting for these events to happen, and that wasn't really any fun. You kinda just would stand around and hope for something to happen. This was specifically annoying for if you needed or wanted to complete a specific public event. With all the downtime in between these events, you might as well have been doing something else like strikes, because at least then you knew something would constantly be happening. Now, the second week of Destiny's launch was when Destiny became the game it was meant to be, at least in my opinion. What Destiny wasn't in the Crucible or in the patrols or strikes, but in the raids. The second week of Destiny introduced the community to the first ever raid, Vault of Glass. A raid was something never really done in a first-person shooter before, and let's just say Bungie really knocked it out of the park. Being the game's first 6-man PvE event, the raid was a complex, high-level, and just what people needed in terms of grind activity. The raids gave you high-complexity boss encounters, making them more than just bosses with lots of health, parkour to do in between encounters, and puzzle solving. Each player had to be on top of everything because if even just one person messed up the roll, the consequences could be failure for the whole team, and you'd have to start that encounter over. The raids really brought people together as no one had ever seen anything like this before, and everyone just wanted to solve it together and get that sweet, sweet loot that awaited you at the end of the raids, as well as you really felt rewarded for being a team. Raids brought some really special social experiences that haven't been replicated by any other games, at least for me, and they really are the reason that I get on Destiny to this day and just keep playing and keep doing raids, because they're just really fun. Even if I have all the gear unlocked, I just want to keep doing them. But though great for most players, Vault of Glass and other raids were yet another factor at play to why players left the game. People said it was too hard, or you shouldn't need 5 other players to do this activity with. There was no matchmaking for raids because Bungie felt they were simply too hard to do with random people and with little to no coordination. So though the raids were great for people who were fans of the game already, it caused solo players on the fence about leaving the game to leave because there's simply no way they were going to find people to do the raids with, is how they felt. Now the rest of year 1 can be summed up pretty quickly. The game more or less stayed in the same state as launch, but with the addition of the expansions Dark Below and House of Wolves. Though the expansions were no Taken King or Rise of Iron, they did offer some things into the game worth mentioning that players love to this day. Both expansions added some much needed Crucible content as well as strikes and campaign content that gave players some comprehensive storytelling. Dark Below added Eris Morn to the tower, and you learn of her story and her slayed fire team at the hands of the Hive God Crota. And that's where the story takes off, eventually leading you to finish what Eris started by descending into the moon's hellmouth and defeating Crota in his realm in Destiny's second raid, Crota's End. House of Wolves introduced the second social space, The Reef, the competitive PvP event Trials of Osiris, and gave us the campaign about the Fallen betraying the Awoken people and their queen Mara Sop. The story was about us hunting down the leader of the fallen House of Wolves and bringing him to justice for his crimes against the Awoken by capturing him and placing him in the Prison of Elders, Destiny's first wave-based PvE activity. Now this basically wrapped up Destiny 1, and what would come next would change Destiny forever.
His name is Oryx, the Taken King. And he's coming for you, Guardian.
Taken King was the big one, the expansion that made Destiny into the game it is to this day. With a new campaign that was almost as big as the base games, Taken King gave us a new great story to experience, as well as many new strikes and the new King's Fall raid, where we would venture deep into the Dreadnought and slay Oryx in Destiny's biggest and most complex raid yet. The Crucible received new maps, the character classes, each new subclass. We got a new heavy weapon type and swords, and on the patrol side of things, we got the Dreadnought, Oryx's huge palace in the sky orbiting Saturn. This was the first patrol that really improved upon what patrolling was. There were all the basic elements that Year 1 patrols had to offer, but so much more. You didn't know what secrets lied around each corner, with hidden chests that could only be opened through new methods, hidden parkour, and hidden bosses. But the biggest improvement to the patrol that the Dreadnought offered was the all-new PvE event that you and other fire teams could beat together, the Court of Oryx. This wave mode type event let you choose the difficulty based on the rune you had to activate it. So unlike public events activating at random times, you and other players in the server had the freedom to choose when you were going to enter battle to fight the Taken bosses and how difficult it would be. Taken King was just the thing Destiny needed, and it was and continues to be to many players' favorite expansion to date. There's more I could say, but it was just simply great. It was a fantastic expansion, and it made Destiny to the game that everyone just loves. It took it out of that shell that Year 1 was in and made it into the game that it was meant to be from the start. If Year 2 made Destiny into the game it is today, then Year 3 was just icing on the cake. The expansion Rise of Iron brought nothing but more quality content to Destiny and made it feel like there was even more to do. The Plaguelands, the expansion's patrol, doubled down onto the groundwork that the Taken King laid out in terms of what a patrol should be, and added yet another great PvE event to do while patrolling, Archon's Forge. Archon's Forge was more or less the same idea as Court of Oryx, but with a couple of differences and, in my opinion, more fun. The expansion's campaign introduced us to the Plaguelands, and we learn of Lord Saladin and his fallen Iron Lords, but more importantly, Siva. Siva was the main theme of the expansion. This ancient Golden Age nanotechnology was being infused into the Fallen, who had uncovered Siva and were trying to use it as a weapon, and it was our job to stop them. And that's where Destiny's fourth and final raid, Wrath of the Machine, comes into play. You went deep into the Plaguelands to stop these fallen leaders before they had fully uncovered Siva's potential, and it was too late to stop them. And also, you gotta fight a giant death Zamboni. How cool is that? Now that quickly and pretty much sums up what Destiny was. All the expansions were out now. Rise of Iron was the end of a game that Bungie had made throughout those 3 years into one of the greatest experiences myself and many other players got to have in gaming. And with Destiny 2 right around the corner, it was time to move on. Psych! Age of Triumph, baby! This was Destiny's final big hurrah. They took Destiny's raids that everyone knew and loved in this update and remastered them to fit the current level cap of 400 light and brought in fantastic new rewards and ornaments for this Age of Triumph. Plus brought back Sparrow Racing, which is always fun. Age of Triumph was a celebration of what Destiny was and what it had become for this final update of the game. The journey of Destiny is quite a big one, and I know I didn't cover everything, and I know there are others who are much more knowledgeable on Destiny as a whole, but I love Destiny as a gaming franchise, and there have been some bumps in the road, but in the end, I think the game delivered on so many experiences for all of us and all the friends we met along the way. Like our first raid group, or that squad you ran with in Trials of Osiris. These are social experiences that we only have because of one reason: Bungie. Thank you for watching, and I hope I did a good job with this video and going over the things that happened in this journey. Feel free to definitely let me know the things I definitely did leave out of the video so that we could talk about it in the comments, and if you have any experiences you want to share about Destiny, feel free to leave them in the comments as well and let me know what you think of the video and what kind of videos you want to see in the future about Destiny or other games. That's all for now, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.